Welcome to this video lesson on 1-2 solving multi-step equations. Today we're going to talk about the properties of equality and how they help us solve multi-step equations, and then we're going to practice with a few examples. So we are starting on page 15 in your textbook. And this first page doesn't really have examples, it just has more summaries and definitions. So we're going to look through those together. But first, go ahead and pause the video, and I want you to read this paragraph right here about solving multi-step equations. Okay, so in short, a multi-step equation is where we have two or more operations that are happening. So an example of that could be something like 2x plus 5 is equal to 10. So this is a two-step or a multi-step equation because if we want to solve for x, we want to solve for the unknown, we need to undo two things. We need to work backwards. We want to get x by itself, and right now we're adding 5 to x. So the opposite of adding 5 would be to subtract 5. And whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. This is known as a property of equality. We're trying to keep this balanced. So whatever we do on one side, we have to do to the other. Okay, that would leave us with 2x is equal to 10 minus 5 is 5. And now this is the second step, or the second thing we're going to do to get x by itself. We talked about this in the last video lesson. When we write a number next to a letter, that is telling us we're multiplying. So the opposite of multiplication would be division. We're going to divide by 2, and whatever we do to one side of the equation, we have to do to the other side. So we're going to divide by 2 over here as well. This keeps things balanced. So our final answer is that x is equal to 5 halves, or 5 over 2. That's just an example of solving a multi-step equation, and this particular case was a two-step equation. So it's okay if that didn't make perfect sense right now. We're going to have some more time to practice, but I just wanted to give you a clear example of what that is. All right, go ahead and take a look at the concept summary. We have 4 different types of properties of equality. We're going to talk about each of these 4 types in class, and we're going to do an activity to help us practice using these with real numbers, real examples. But read it, see what you can understand from here. Try to replace some of these letters here that they're talking about with actual numbers, and that'll give you a better understanding of what's happening here. But what I really want you to understand is that we have 4 different types that correspond to the 4 different types of math operations. So we have addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. So pause the video, take a moment to read those, and we're going to work through some examples. Okay, moving on to the next page, page 16. We're going to start with example 1. So it's asking us to use the properties of equality to solve each equation, and then check your solution. So just like you would have learned in middle school or in pre-algebra, we are trying to solve for this letter, this unknown right here, which is A. But A is surrounded by stuff right now. And we have to get all that extra stuff away from A, but we have to do it by following the rules. We have to keep everything balanced so we don't mess anything up. So we have 2A minus 6 equals 4. The first thing that we can do to get to A is get rid of that minus 6. So the opposite of minus 6 is going to be plus 6. Keep things balanced, whatever we do to one side of the equation, we do to the other side. So we're going to add 6 over here. Okay. The reason this cancels out is because negative 6 plus 6 is equal to 0. So it goes away. Now we need to simplify on the right side. 4 plus 6 gives us 10. That's how they got this 10 right here. And then we have 2A is equal to 10. Like in my example earlier, we're going to divide both sides by 2 because 2 right next to A represents multiplication. So the opposite of multiplication is division. 2 divided by 2 is equal to 1. So it basically goes away. We could write a 1 in front of A, but it would mean the same thing. And 10 divided by 2 gives us 5. So our final answer is A is equal to 5. Okay. We could check our solution by plugging it back into A in the equation or replacing it for A in the equation. So here we have 2A minus 6 equals 4. We take that solution and we plug it back in for A and we simplify. So 2 times 5 is equal to 10. 10 minus 6 is equal to 4. And our left side is equal to our right side. 4 equals 4. So we know that, yes, this is a solution. Yes, this is correct. Okay. Let's do part B here. So this is a different problem. So we have n plus 1 divided by negative 2 equals 15. This one looks scary because we have a fraction, but remember, in algebra, if we start thinking of fractions as division, it's going to help us out. So n plus 1, the whole top part, is being divided by negative 2. The opposite of dividing by negative 2 is multiplying by negative 2. Whatever you do to one side of the equation, you need to do to the other side. So we're going to multiply by negative 2 on this side. These cancel each other out. Now, negative 2 times 15 gives us negative 30. Okay, so we have n plus 1, and we're just left with what was on the top. Our denominator went away. The bottom of the fraction went away. So now n plus 1 equals negative 30. We want to get to that n, but right now we're adding 1 to the n. So the opposite of plus 1 is minus 1. And whatever you do to one side, you need to do to the other. So we're going to subtract 1 over here. Positive 1 minus 1 cancels out, becomes 0. You're left with n. N is equal to negative 30 minus 1. You can plug this into your calculator. But negative 30 minus 1 is equal to negative 31. Now, you might have had an issue right here with what I did. This might not be common notation. If you don't understand how I got just n plus 1, if you don't understand where that fraction went, then talk to me in class about that or ask me when we go over this lesson, and I'd love to show you how I got there. All right, so n equals negative 31 is our solution, and we can check that just like we did up above by plugging it back in for n in our equation and simplifying and seeing if our left side would equal 15, just like our right side does. And if it does, then we know that we're correct. I'm not going to do that here, but that's something you can test out if you're curious. Okay, try this check on your own, and we'll go over it in class. Do part A and B. Moving on to page 17, here we have a word problem. This time we're going to learn how to write and solve a multi-step equation. So we're not just given an equation to solve. We have to first write it. So fundraising. Go ahead and pause the video, read this problem, and then we will work it out together. Okay. So it's asking us to complete the table to write an equation for the cost of the dance. In words, this goes back to what we learned in the last lesson, how to go between a sentence and an equation, a written equation with numbers. So we have 2/5 of the cost plus 150 is 630. So let C equal the cost of, here we're going to say the dance. So C is the cost of the dance. Now our equation, if we're using what we learned in the last lesson, we're going to write out 2/5 of the cost. So 2/5 of C, 2/5 of C. When we use the word of, that is actually representing multiplication. So 2/5 of C. I'm going to use multiplication like this. I'm going to write in parentheses. You could write it just right next to the 2/5 like that. You could write it with a dot separating, but I'm going to do parentheses. 2/5 times C plus 150 is 630. Is represents an equal sign. So we're going to say equals 630. So here is our equation. Now that we have an equation, we can solve this equation using our properties. So, okay, we want to get C by itself. And right now we've got a lot of things around C. So the first thing we're going to do is get rid of the outer layer, this 150. We're going to do the opposite. So if we have plus 150, we're going to subtract 150. And whatever we do to one side, we need to do to the other. Subtract 150 over here. These cancel out. That's the goal. That's what we want to do. Now 630 minus 150 leaves us with 480. So remember earlier we talked about how we could write 2/5 C with parentheses, or we could write them right next to each other for multiplication. The opposite of multiplication is division. Okay? This is where it might get a little bit tricky if you don't remember, but division is the same thing as multiplying by the inverse. And what that means is it's a fancy way of saying we're going to flip this fraction like that. All right. It's going to undo this because 5 times 2 gives us 10. And 2 times 5 gives us 10. And what is 10 divided by 10? It's equal to 1. And 1 times C is just C. So it cancels out, and that's exactly what we wanted to happen. But whatever we do to one side, we need to do to the other. So 5 halves times 480. Now, when you multiply that on a calculator, you can plug that in. And I'll show you in class if you don't know how to plug in a fraction into your calculators. But you'll plug in that fraction, multiply it by 480, and this is the answer that you will get. C is equal to 1,200. So that is the cost of the dance. 1,200. Okay, try this check on your own. It's another word problem and it's multiple choice. We'll go over that in class tomorrow. Okay, on page 18, we're going to do one last example. This one's a little bit weird, but sometimes we'll have an example where the number out in front is not a number, it's actually just a letter. That's okay, we'll still follow the same process. Our answer just might look a little different. So we're trying to solve this for x, not for a. We don't know what a is, but we're going to undo all of the numbers around x. So we have plus 7. We're going to subtract 7. Whatever we do to one side, we need to do to the other. These cancel out. We're left with a times x is equal to negative 2 because 5 minus 7 is negative 2. And then we're going to divide ax by a. Whatever you do to one side, you need to do to the other. So they divide by a here. And since we don't know what a is, our final answer is just x is equal to negative 2 over a. That's it. So it looks a little weird, but it's actually pretty easy. All right, try this check on your own and we'll go over that in class. And that is it for the 1-2 video lesson. Thanks for watching.